All right, we are in Job 28. Job 28. This is concluding. All of the friends have spoken. Job has responded to the last of those friends, and now he's in the process of, he's responded to each of them individually, and now he's in the process of making one last statement of them collectively, and then he's going to begin his final plea with God. So, in the response to the friends in chapter 27, the emphasis was upon his integrity. He once and for all says, "Look, I didn't do what you're saying I did." Now he's going to give a discussion about wisdom because, there's been a whole lot of talking, and how much wisdom there was is debatable, right? It's kind of like Solomon says, in the multitude of words, there ceases not to be sin. The more you talk, the more trouble you get yourself into. And so he goes into this beautiful discussion about wisdom. So let's begin here in chapter 28. And he begins, and this chapter comes to us basically in three sections where he talks to us about, he's going to place an emphasis upon mining and man's ability to search, his ability to find things, even things that are hidden deep in the earth or in strange places. But man has an inability to find wisdom. And only God knows where wisdom is, and therefore you have to come to him if you want wisdom. So that's the basic thrust of what he's going to say. All right. Surely a mine is for silver. Surely is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth and copper is smelted from the ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches out to the farthest limit the ore in gloom and deep darkness. And so man has a way of discovering these things, of processing these things, of going through. And many of you will understand that way better than I do. Partly, just experiences, jobs, different things. Many of you have worked in factories. You're able to see what it is you're able to produce and do some of those things and the processes that go along with that. Man putting an end to darkness and searches out the farthest limits. The idea of going into these places that are usually very dark. Of course, man can find a way to bring light into it, to search it out, and to be able to see the contents of whatever this dark place is, whether that be a cave or the inside of a mountain somewhere or something in the earth. Man is able to do that through his ingenuity, and that's part of how God created us. He wanted us to be inventive. I think that's part of exercising dominion, is learning how to use what is here and to take these raw elements and to invent from them and to make things better and more prosperous. And I think that's part of what we were put here to do. So he continues on that illustration in verse 4. He says, he opens shafts in a valley away from where anyone lives. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang in the air far away from mankind, and they swing to and fro. And so he opens up new mining operations in hidden places, obviously, where people no longer traverse, and even if they did, they wouldn't see them because many of them are internal. And the idea of hanging in the air far away from mankind, they swing to and fro. There's a little bit of ambiguity there, but personally, I take it to mean this is something like we might think of rappelling down, like you're dangling in a cave or something by ropes, and there you're searching for, whatever it is you're searching for when you're there. But I think that's kind of the idea that he has in mind, is that we're able to go into those places and to explore them. Verse 5, as for the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as by fire. There may be some scientific implications here. I'm not exactly certain on all of that. But it is interesting. It seems like the point he's making is the same earth that produces bread, we're able to use it and to grow things. And then obviously we don't grow bread. and we don't go to the garden and grow bread, but we grow the things that can produce it, right? And so what he's saying is you can get those types of things from the earth, but if you were to plunge deeper into the earth, you'd find heat, right? You'd find very deep in there, the core of the earth, very hot. And so it's almost a paradox to a degree. Verse 6, its stones are the place of sapphire, and it has dust of gold. The idea behind sapphire is the word used. It's a word with which I was not very familiar at all. But anyway, not sapphire, the word. There's another two words that are used to more literally render it. But the idea is of a deep and dark blue stone that would have been used in jewelry. One of the things mentioned was cylinder seals. And what they mean by cylinder seals, cylinders where many times kings would put conquest on a cylinder. Like there's a Cyrus cylinder that you can look up, right? And it could be a cylinder that contained a document and then was sealed officially, and you would have a signet ring to seal it, right? And so these things would be explored, these precious jewels. Then in verse 7 it says, the path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. And so these things, the idea is they're hidden. I mean, an animal, whether it's flying up high, it cannot look down and see in it. It cannot find these places on its own just through the naked eye. It's the superiority of humanity, the intellect and the ability to search out and to explore. He says, the proud beasts have not trodden it, and the lion has not passed over it. There may be some implications that proud beasts may have a reference to who we will later meet in chapter 41 as Leviathan. Either way, the point is man is able to do things that the animals cannot do, right? We're able to use the intellect, use the innovation, all the different things that are involved. And so what he's doing is he's just tipping his hat to mankind. We're able to do a lot of things, and it's amazing when you look at what people can do. You think about, I was reading the other day, or the other night, antibiotics according to this individual, weren't really around much until the late 1920s. Relatively a new thing, whereas people, in this particular book I was reading, a young lady died due to a bite mark that grew infected. They had nothing to treat it with, and it caused great inflammation and all different types of things. And so just human ingenuity and invention. Verse 9, man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. Okay, excavation, the idea of moving things. You can move large hills, you can move the dirt, you can move the rocks, you can do all those things. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He can explore it, he can cut roads through it, through mountains. He dams up the streams so that they do not trickle. And the thing that is hidden, he brings out to light. This, the way I take it anyway, when he's damming up the stream, he's looking for things in the stream bed. He's stopping the water flow, damming it up, so he can search in this particular area. But again, the overall point, and as with anything, everybody's got multiple opinions on them. But the big picture is just that. Human beings there's something in us, I think, that's part of being in God's image that gives us creative ability, okay? And we're able to invent and to do all different types of things. However, the point he's going to make now is that there are limits to what we can do. And when it comes to something like wisdom, you're not going to be able to mine for it, okay? It's not necessarily a matter of your creativity and your intellect and your skills. It's something far more difficult than that. He says, but where shall wisdom be found, and where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. Okay? So, as people who are Christian people, we've grown up hearing the word wisdom. We've been around the term wisdom. I mean, we have books that we call wisdom literature. Okay? We're studying one of them. But wisdom is not always prized. And it's not even always prized amongst Christian people, although it should be. But wisdom is, the point he's fixing to make is, wisdom is extremely valuable. And part of its value is because it's incredibly hard to find. Okay? Look, you want to find an opinion, they're a dime a dozen. Okay? Matter of fact, to be honest with you, they're a dozen. All right? But you want to find one that's actually worth something? And that's the thing. You know, we can say, and I put myself at the front of this, we can say all the time, well, that's my opinion. That's true, but you need to remember that not all opinions are created equal. All right? Not all opinions are created equal. Some of them have value. You know, somehow in our culture that has become a trump word. Well, that's my opinion. Well, your opinion may be wrong. I mean, I don't really understand why that's so offensive. Or why it's so offensive to say, you know what, you may be right, but I don't think you are. I'm not going to agree with your opinion. And so you look at all types of situations, and then you watch the way that people handle them. You watch the way that they advise other people to handle them, and you just kind of shake your head and go, You could literally listen to anyone else, and I think you could do better. I think you could do better. So, he says, verse 13, man does not know its worth. It's not held to the high degree that it should be, okay? And there are I think there are many reasons why that is. But, and that is because wisdom involves truth, and truth by its nature is hard. Truth by its nature is hard. Because truth, it doesn't care about your feelings. It just kind of is what it is. Okay? I'm not saying you have to be careless in how you present truth. I'm saying truth in itself, it just is what it is. And a lot of times, what we say, when we say we really want truth, what we really don't want truth, we just want somebody to agree with us. And that's an issue. Matter of fact, I kind of get uncomfortable if I'm in a room and everybody's agreeing. That just makes me really uncomfortable. No dissent whatsoever, like nothing. Especially on big things, it's very concerning. So he goes and he personifies certain things, and he says, the deep says it's not in me, talking about the sea and the ocean. The sea says it's not with me. It cannot be bought for gold, and silver cannot be weighed at its price. You cannot buy wisdom, okay? There are people with money running out of their ears that are as foolish as this day is long, and no amount of money is ever going to make them wise. Now, they could use that money to pay someone to teach them if they would be willing to learn it. But it's not going to make them wise. And that's, it can't be bought for gold. Silver can't be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir. It's precious in precious onyx or sapphire. Onyx and sapphire, some of these were present in, onyx, of course, was present in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 2. Also present in the Urim and Thummim that was worn by the high priest in his breastplate, Exodus 28. Gold and glass cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above pearls. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. It's poetically saying, you can't buy it, but its price is invaluable. So wisdom is a very precious commodity that is extremely hard to find. Okay? And if you find it, you pay the price to get it. Okay? You pay the price to get it. You'll do what it takes to learn it. In Proverbs and other places when it's talking about, buy the truth and sell it not, things along those lines, you're willing to invest whatever it takes to learn it. Okay? So, he now moves to this third section where he says, from where then does wisdom come, and where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Can't find it. Abaddon and death, Apollyon in Greek, we went through this already. It's just talking about the grave, the underworld, whatever. We have heard a rumor of it with our ears. Okay, this is all obviously highly figurative and personified. And so, no, you can't. It's like going to certain parts of creation and asking, do you know where wisdom is? Nope. Do you know where wisdom is? Nope. Do you know where? Oh, I've heard of it. Okay, it's a very vivid way of illustrating something. So verse 23, it says, God understands the way of it. He knows its place. Here's the person who knows where it is. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. And he gave to the wind its weight and apportioned the waters by measure. When he made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning of the thunder. Then he saw it and declared it. He established it and searched it out. This is in ways echoing back to creation and other things. It's very similar. We won't take the time to look at it, but you can read Proverbs chapter 8, where there's a pretty long discussion where wisdom speaks, okay? Talking about how wisdom was present in the beginning. God possessed me when I laid the foundations of the world, things along those lines. Wisdom has always been with God. And what we later come to realize when we look at Jesus is that wisdom is actually embodied in a being, and that's Jesus. Okay? The same way truth is embodied in a being. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's the embodiment of it. Okay? Therefore, since God knows where it is, he says to man, verse 28, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. The fear of the Lord is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. So to have a respect for who God is, that's the beginning. And this is the way Proverbs opens up, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Basically, all of our problems start, even at the very beginning in Genesis 3, all of our problems start when we want to rearrange the creation order. Where you have God and humanity and animals. And when we decide we're going to pull God down to our level, or we think we're going to climb up to God's level, hence we become unaccountable to anyone. We think we have within us the wisdom and the ability to know what we should do, to chart our own course. And we're not accountable to anyone for how we live our lives. Just look at our world. I mean, today is not the best day for me, but it just feels like a disaster. Like we don't believe we're accountable for what we do. We don't believe that God is going to hold us accountable, that He knows better than we do, that we don't know what is best for us. You know, we say that sometimes, I know what is best for me. Well, I suppose there are some contexts where you could say that where that might be true, okay? But generally speaking, the Bible says just the opposite. We don't know what is best for us. We don't. Jeremiah 10:23, the way of man is not in himself. It's not in man who walks to direct his own steps. Proverbs 14 twice, 14:12 and 16:25. There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. And so the fear of the Lord is foundational. It shapes your view of the world. And if that is the formative view of the world that you and I possess, we come at the world in a completely different way than other people do. So when you look at people who are out of control, you look at people who live like there's no such thing as a law, like there's no such thing as human decency, you watch people live that way. It doesn't matter what they profess. What they practically believe is that they're not accountable. And the ultimate reality is we are accountable. And when we say we're not accountable, we're acting like children. You know, you always hear the person who is very loud who says, you know, I don't like what government's doing. I'm not paying my taxes anymore. All right, you don't have to. But you will be enjoying a stay of 3 to 5 years in federal prison. I promise you, you're accountable. So, I mean, I guess that makes, I don't know, I guess that makes some people feel like they're more masculine or in control or something along those lines, but anybody that's looking at that with common sense is going, well, that's dumb. Like, why would you say that? We're all accountable. We're accountable to the people we work for. We're accountable to our spouses. I mean, I think in a way I could argue we're even accountable to our kids in the way that we treat them. And so that begins when the fear of the Lord, that's the beginning of it. And then to turn away from evil. You see, if you try and turn away from evil without the fear of the Lord, how do you know what is good and how do you know what is evil? If you don't acknowledge there's someone above you who knows more than you, then if you just say, I turn away from evil, well, then evil is whatever you decide what evil is. The two go together. When you acknowledge God as the one in control, the one who decides what is right and wrong, then you know from what you should be departing. Because you know what he calls evil. And this is what Isaiah meant in Isaiah 5 and verse 20 when he talks about how they got their view of the world upside down. Woe to those who put light for darkness and darkness for light, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Their whole view of the world is inverted, is completely upside down. And it's the lie of the garden. Eat of the tree because God's trying to keep you down, and it'll open your eyes and you'll know things, and then you'll be like God. If you overthrow God, you'll be liberated. No. Because you'll serve one of two masters. You won't be liberated. You'll just trade a master who loves you more than anything for a master who doesn't care about you one bit. That's the only difference. We all serve somebody. So Job is calling us to that point. God is calling us to that point. And by the way, to turn away from evil is understanding. This is exactly how Job is described in the beginning. A perfect and an upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil. That's how God describes him. That's how he lived. And when you see someone who does this, I got to tell you, when you see someone who lives this way, it is like a breath of fresh air and nothing. It's beautiful to watch. To watch someone who lives this way. The way that they live is almost like, it's just beautiful. That's the only word I know how to describe. That it's just special. And, it's Jesus-like. And what we're about to see here is Job is going to give us a peek into his life before all this happened to him, and he's going to show us what this life looks like. Because he's going to make his appeal to God, but he's going to do that by first of all saying in chapter 29, this is what my life was like before this happened to me. Then in 30, this is what my life is like now. And in 31, I didn't do any of this, and if I did, then you know what? I deserved what I got. So in 29, as he addresses God, it says, and Job took up his discourse and said, "Oh, that I were in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. As I was in my prime, and the friendship of God was on my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, and when my children were all around me." Now, his friends have been saying, you've put something ahead of God. You've put yourself ahead of God. When Job talks about what his life used to be like, what are the first words that come out of his mouth? The first words are, on the days when God watched over me, when my relationship with God was right. That's what I miss. That's what I miss the most. His lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. He was the one who taught me how to live, who taught me what I should be doing. He's the one who guided me through my life. When I was in my prime and the friendship of God was upon my tent. The idea behind this may have to do with an ancient custom, the idea of God meeting with him in his personal tent, in privacy of communication. Job is, from my estimation anyway, a patriarch, and patriarchs communicated directly with God. And obviously that has not been happening. And Job misses that. I remember reading Lee Strobel's The Case for Faith. Pretty sure that's it. If not, it's one of the other cases for something. But in it, he interviews a guy who is, well, I think he's dead now, but at the time was an avowed promoter of atheism, but he had previously, before that, been a companion of Billy Graham in his crusades. And I'll never forget reading it years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Strobel describes when he's talking to him and asking him questions about what kind of led him to denounce and to go completely in the opposite direction. But one of the things that the guy said to him was just startling. He said, he gave some reasons, and then he kind of paused and he looked up at Lee with kind of tears in his eyes and said, "But you know what? Here's the thing. When it comes to Jesus, I miss him. I miss him." Because the consequence of his atheism took him to reject Jesus, and rejecting Jesus, he rejected what his life was built on. He missed him. Now, Job has done none of that. But when he talks about it, you can hear him saying that. I miss him. I miss him. He just won't talk to me. And as we've talked about before, if you're a person who has a relationship with God and then you feel like he won't listen to you and he's attacking you and he won't explain himself, and like, that is the definition of hell. That's it. You know, a lot of times when people talk about hellfire and brimstone type preaching, I think sometimes we miss the point. Should we think about hell? Yes. But you got to understand something. Hell is not hell because you're hot. Hell is hell because you're cut off from God forever. And you can't get to him. And you can't talk to him. And you can't see him. Hell is a godless existence for eternity. Now people say, are you denying fire? No, listen, I don't want to find out. I don't care. I don't want to find out. I don't plan on finding out. But hell, the worst part of it is it's a godless existence. And that's why there's a song, one of my dad's favorite songs, he always led it when I was a kid, was, I don't know, I think it's called Alleluia 238 something, at least in the songbook we grew up with. But anyway, there's a phrase in the song that even when we sing it now, it still kind of tugs at me. And that is in the second verse when it's talking about Jesus, we sing this phrase, "What a sorrow if I lost him." What are we going to do if we lose him? If he's your life and you lose him, I mean, I don't, what do you say? What do you do? And that's exactly how Job feels. And when you get that, you can start to see when he talks about this, he has to have tears in his eyes. This is what makes him so special. His fear and his relationship with God. We'll pick up there next Wednesday night.